Okay, this is a continuation of a response to as, and if this video happens to come through before part 1, please don't watch it yet. And I'm specifically directing this to as, and if you're not interested in philosophy or philosophical discussions, please stop this or I'll bore you to death. Okay, I was talking about the problem of simple, unanalyzable concepts as a source of meaning, and I've just discussed about the problem of ostensive definitions not ameliorating ambiguity. And I'd like to discuss part 2 of that, of the problem of simple, unanalyzable concepts as a source of meaning. Okay, number 2, the problem of the missing shade of blue. Empiricists contend that the simple, unanalyzable concepts are those that refer to sense experience, for example, shapes and colors. That which does not refer to the world of sense experience, they claim, is meaningless. Empiricist David Hume, however, posited an interesting problem for himself. He imagined the following. Suppose you observed all the colors in the blue spectrum, but one small color of blue was missing. Could the missing shade of blue be constructed non-empirically, that is, separate from experience? Hume said yes, but that would defeat his own theory, because then there would be a color in his mind that he didn't obtain from experience. Number 3, the fallacy of the ability to define sets of necessary and sufficient criteria. As stated earlier, the empiricist's view is that whatever one knows is ultimately reducible to experiential terms, and that humans retain sets of criteria in their minds, that is, complex constructs or definitions constructed from experience and sense impressions, that we then apply to the world in order to recognize objects as an instance of that kind. For example, the term horse, an empiricist would say, can be intelligible because those who understand horse understand the terms or concepts that comprise the parts of those. For example, legs, a body, a head, etc. And they also understand the terms that comprise those parts. For example, ankles, skin, etc., until the person who understands horse eventually reaches those terms or concepts that purely refer to sense experience, color, shape, etc. The assertion is that people retain within themselves, consciously or subconsciously, sets of criteria that they apply to the world in order to identify objects in the world, and this is a commonly held view today. It is important to realize that for the empiricist, these criteria or definitions must be used in the strictest sense in order for their theory of recognition and meaning to work. That is, the set of conditions or criteria that the knowing person must possess, either consciously or subconsciously, must be such that if they are true of X, then X is an example of whatever these conditions are for. If those conditions are not true of X, then it is not an instance of X. If this were not true for the empiricist, the knowing person would be in a constant state of confusion, attempting to determine which conditions referred to what. A very strange state indeed. The problem with this view becomes quite clear when one tries to construct a strict definition or analysis of anything. After all, for example, there are three-legged horses, there are horses without heads, there are hairless horses, etc., and yet we recognize them as horses. However, it is impossible to say exactly what constitutes an instance of horse and what does not. This assertion will be discussed further in this paper. And I also have a note here. This will cause some controversy. Many who assert that computers will be capable of recognition in the same way that humans are, assert that the inability to define a set of necessary and sufficient criteria for any concept is not a philosophical problem, but merely a practical one. That is a matter of time. In this paper, I am arguing otherwise. Okay, now another problem, number 4. Empiricists use concepts such as triangle and horse as examples of complex concepts. Even though there is nothing wrong, per se, with using triangles or horses as examples of complex concepts, other than the problems already discussed, it's important to note that these examples do not approach the depth and sophistication of human language. For example, how would one reduce or analyze the concept he became less introverted after receiving all her caring and affection to reds, greens, and ovals. Now onto a view of recognition, template theory. Template theory is merely another variation of the empiricist idea that humans retain sets of criteria in their minds, complex constructs or definitions constructed from experience, sense impressions, that we then apply to the world so that we can recognize objects as an instance of that kind. Analogously, template theory maintains that humans retain in their minds templates or standards, models, or mental pictures that are complex in nature and are used to recognize objects in the world as instances of that kind. For example, one might ask, how do you recognize a thing as a triangle? Many people assume a template theory of recognition. That is, I have a template or standard of a triangle in my mind that if what I observe matches the thing in my mind, I will recognize the thing in the world as a thing in my mind, a triangle. It's interesting to note that thought pictures are complex structures synonymous with the empiricist view that a thought is a structured arrangement of simple elements. That is, on this view, the thing in the mind is just a picture in space, comprised of elements which, when put together, convey its own meaning, which can then be referred to in order to obtain a meaning connection. However, there can be no more compelling argument against template theory than the problem of the abstract particular, sometimes referred to as the problem of the locked triangle. Simply stated, the thing in one's mind cannot be the abstract standard it needs to be in order to fulfill all the possibilities for the instances of, for example, triangle. The thing in the mind must have at least all the shapes that a triangle could possibly have. But that is a thing that cannot possibly exist. The thing in the mind is itself, therefore, a self-contradiction. In other words, the thing in one's mind cannot be the abstract standard one uses for recognizing triangles, because the thing in one's mind is only a particular, one kind, one possible triangle. This concept is akin to trying to define or classify an entire set by simply exemplifying one member of the set. Therefore, this cannot be the way we recognize triangles, or anything for that matter. Plato faced the same problem in his theory of forms. He defined forms as abstract concepts that are eternal, never changing, but individual entities. So, on Plato's view, the answer to the question, how do you know that this thing is a triangle, is that we see that the object in the world matches the form triangle. Plato's problem is identical to John Locke's. That is, the thing in the mind, whether it be Plato's form or Locke's mental picture, cannot be both an abstract and a particular. It is not that this is improbable, it is impossible. On to communication. The empiricist contends that thought is a structured arrangement of unanalyzable concepts, and therefore communication involves transforming these structured arrangements of unanalyzable concepts into words and speech, and then the hearer retransforms the words once again into simple unanalyzable concepts. Then the extent to which the thing in the mind matches what the first person stated is the extent to which the two people have communicated. That is, if the two thought things are congruent, linguistic communication has been completely successful. So, for example, person A may say to person B, "The cat is on the mat." Person A transforms the thoughts into words, and upon hearing those sounds, person B retransforms them into thought. In essence, person B has retrieved person A's thought. Questions that arise with respect to this language and communication model are, what is it that gives the sounds their meaning? Or restated, what has been added to these sounds to give them their meaning? It's first interesting to note there are many sounds in the world that we say do not have meaning. For example, a tree falling or a glass shattering. Philosophers may differentiate non-meaningful sounds from meaningful sounds in this way. I think I'll continue on to another video. Boy, this is going to be long. All right. I hope you're still with me. On to part 3.